If you're tired of MC gets a cheat system and wins everything by Chapter 3, this list isn't for you. These 10 manhwa are for the readers who want to watch a nobody bleed, fail, and grind their way to the top. No shortcuts, no plot armor, just obsession and pain. So, let's get started. Number 10 on our list is Fist Demon of Mount Hua. Dam Ho is the only survivor of a massacre that wiped out his entire village, and he's left with a lame leg, the one injury that should end any martial artist's career before it starts. Everyone tells him to quit. He doesn't listen. At first, I thought this was just another disabled underdog story we've all read 100 times. What surprised me is how much the art leans into his physical struggle. Every stance, every stumble, feels earned instead of dramatized for sympathy. The early chapters are slow. I won't pretend otherwise, but that slowness is the point. Status: axed at chapter 182, which stings. Score: 7.8 expert points. Docked hard because the ending was ripped away before the payoff. Number 9 is Infinite Level Up in Murim. Tang Yu-sung dies a nobody on the battlefield. No talent, no glory, just another body in the dirt. Then he wakes up back in his childhood with a system in his head that turns every ounce of effort into measurable progress. I'll admit, the system gimmick usually makes me roll my eyes, but here it works differently. It doesn't hand him power, it just proves the work he's already putting in. What really got me is how the grind never disappears, even as he gets stronger. The pacing dips around the mid-arc filler though. Status: ongoing past chapter 268. Score: 8.0 expert points for making leveling up actually feel like sweat instead of a cheat code. Number 8 is Overpowered Sword. Leon has spent years training with a blade, and it's still not enough to beat Lionel, the golden boy of the Royal Academy. Then a legendary sword picks him as its new student, except its first lesson isn't swordsmanship, it's learning how to actually see. At first, I thought this would turn into another Chosen One gets a magic weapon cliché. Instead, the sword makes his life harder before it makes it easier, which is exactly the kind of frustration that makes his wins feel real. The art is a little inconsistent in early chapters, but it improves fast. Status: ongoing past chapter 144. Score: 7.6 expert points. Solid effort-driven power growth, held back by a slower opening arc. Number 7 is Reformation of the Deadbeat Noble. Eren watched his mother die and buried the trauma in sleep, earning the nickname the Lazy Lord from a household that's given up on him. He seems fine with that reputation until a dream about a mysterious swordsman cracks his routine wide open. What really surprised me here is the emotional restraint. This isn't a loud Chapter 1 power awakening. It's a slow unclenching of a kid who convinced himself effort wasn't worth the pain. I'll admit the setup takes a minute to click, but once Eren starts training with intent, the payoff hits harder because you watched him resist it. Status: ongoing past chapter 156. Score: 7.7 expert points for making apathy to discipline feel like a real character arc, not a switch flip. Number 6 is Poison Dragon, the Legend of an Asura. Genzi Qiang watches his entire faction get slaughtered by the Venom clan, then gets turned into a human test subject, pumped full of poison after poison. Somehow, he survives it and comes out the other side as something closer to a weapon than a man. At first, this reads like standard revenge fuel, but the poison as power angle gives it a genuinely nasty body horror edge that separates it from every other vengeance manhwa on the shelf. His strength doesn't come from training montages, it comes from surviving what should have killed him repeatedly. Status: ongoing past chapter 133. Score: 7.5 expert points. Brutal and effective, though the revenge plot can feel one-note in stretches. Number 5 is Murim RPG Simulation. Seolhui is a low-ranking scout for the demon cult who watches his entire squad get slaughtered by a single Manhua master. As he's bleeding out, cursing years of wasted loyalty, a game-style prompt asks if he'd like to start over. I'll admit the video game system trope is everywhere in this genre right now, but what makes this one stand out is how ruthless Seolhui becomes with his second chance. Every decision is calculated, every rep counted. This isn't a redemption story. It's an optimization story, and that cold focus is oddly addictive to read. Status: ongoing past, chapter 196. Score: 7.9 expert points for turning a regret-fueled restart into a genuinely tense strategy manhwa. Number 4 is Standard of Reincarnation. Davin finally beats his cousin Kazan in honorable one-on-one combat, despite having only one arm, and gets stabbed in the back and imprisoned for life as a reward. 500 years later, his soul lands inside a boy named Vincent, who now has to relearn combat from scratch under Davin's guidance. What really surprised me is the dual perspective. You're not just watching one MC grind, you're watching a master relive his own training philosophy through a student's untrained body. It's a clever way to double the hard work theme without repeating the same beats. The God subplot with Yulian takes a bit to land. Status: Ongoing Past, Chapter 195. Score: 8.1 expert points for the mentor and student structure, making every training arc feel purposeful. Number 3 is Survival Story of a Sword King in a Fantasy World. Hanbin Ryu gets yanked into another world with a broken guideline system that traps him in the tutorial stage for over 20 straight years. When he finally escapes, the world has already decided people like him don't deserve a place in it. At first, I thought 20 years stuck on a tutorial sounded almost comedic, but the manhwa plays it dead straight. It's less trapped in a video game, and more trapped in solitary confinement with a sword. That mountain of wasted-looking time becomes the entire reason he's terrifying later, and watching other characters underestimate him never gets old. Status: Ongoing Past, Chapter 301. Score: 8.6 expert points. One of the best payoffs for suffering equals strength in the genre right now. Number 2 is Worthless Regression. Lee Sung-min is a talentless mercenary in a world where the weak simply don't survive, and he doesn't either, until a strange item yanks him back to age 13 with a second shot at life. No money, no talent, no shortcuts, just the terrifying knowledge of how badly things go if he doesn't change. I'll admit the early chapters are bleak, almost to a fault. But that bleakness is what makes every small win land like a gut punch. What really got me is that Sung-min never becomes overpowered in a flashy way. His strength is built entirely from obsessive, unglamorous repetition, which makes this one of the purest hard work stories on this whole list. Status: complete at Chapter 106. Score: 8.9 expert points. A full, satisfying arc with a payoff that actually earns its ending. Number 1 on our list is Eternally Regressing Knight. Encred has wanted to be a knight his entire life, and that dream looks permanently out of reach until the day he dies and wakes right back up at the start of that same day. Suddenly a dead end becomes unlimited attempts, and Encred intends to use every single one of them. What really surprised me is how the time loop isn't played for gimmicks or comedy. It's played as pure, grueling repetition, fight after fight, day after day, until his body and instincts catch up to his will. I'll admit, the loop structure could get repetitive in lesser hands, but here it turns into the most honest depiction of practice makes perfect this genre has ever produced. Status: Ongoing Past, Chapter 112. Score: 9.0 expert points. The definitive grind story, and our number 1 pick for a reason. That's the list. 10 mangas, 1 theme. Nobody hands these characters their strength. They claw it out 1 rep at a time. Drop your own picks in the comments, and if you want more Underdog grinders like this, hit subscribe. We've got plenty more on the way.